Well, welcome to this tutorial on how top management can demonstrate commitment. And this may be a source of exam questions occasionally. And there's also a little bit of duplication with the other tutorial on the roles and responsibilities of top managers. How can a top manager demonstrate their commitment? Well, partly by fulfilling their responsibilities properly. We've already talked about their role and responsibilities. So if they do those responsibilities properly, that is a way of demonstrating their commitment. In terms of exam questions, you could get asked a whole variety of exam questions on this. I mean, you could get asked comment on to what extent a senior manager has fulfilled their responsibilities. Or you could get asked what additional things could they do to improve their fulfillment of their responsibilities. As I say, in some ways, you're going to be talking about the same things. If a manager has failed in their responsibilities, you could comment on that. But if you're asked, how have they demonstrated commitment? Well, you could say, well, they failed to do all these things, which demonstrates a complete lack of commitment. Two different questions, but very similar answers. And it's kind of the same if it's a positive comment. You know, if the manager's very good and they have done all of these things really well, well, if you were asked about how committed they are to comment on their commitment, you could say, well, they've done all these things and that's really good. It shows a lot of commitment. Or it might be a little bit mixed as well. Sometimes the manager is good at some things, but not others, in which case you might talk about both positives and negatives in either question. So very closely related topics. Let's get into this slide here. And here you can really see the commonalities that we had in the other tutorial on the role of senior managers. How can top management demonstrate their commitment to health and safety? So we said that one of the most important things was to clearly define the roles and responsibilities. So to make sure that at every single level of the organization, people know what their job is in relation to health and safety. So if it's managers' jobs to do inspections, that should be documented somewhere in a job description or a procedure, and then they should be trained and told that that is their job. Top management should also nominate somebody to lead health and safety. And when I say lead somebody, it's like a top manager. If you've got a board of directors or a management team, a senior management team, it's useful to nominate one person as the health and safety champion on the team. And so that person has their safety as their remit, and it's their responsibility. And they answer to the rest of the board. So the health and safety team would report into this senior director who is the nominated health and safety champion. Now the whole management team at the very top should try to foster a positive health and safety culture, a culture of responsibility. So they have to lead by example and take personal responsibility for health and safety. They have to keep health and safety in the front of their mind when making business decisions. They must not be seen or be perceived to sacrifice health and safety when it's convenient for the business. So taking that attitude at the very top will then filter down throughout the rest of the organization. Hey, sorry to interrupt. If you're regretting your choice of course provider and you'd wish you studied with me instead, there's no problem. You can. Why don't you head over to Google right now and Google Compassa Rescue. Search for that and go to our rescue package. This is available for both international and national general certificate students. Perhaps your course is expired. Perhaps you've failed one of the assessments and you don't know what to do next. Perhaps you're just not happy with the level of teaching or support you're getting from your course provider. In that case, come check out the rescue package and click on Apply Now. We will offer you a very special discount so that you can get access to our full general certificate course with all of my tutor support, all of our mock exam support, NG2, IG2 project support, all of our video tutorials, study books, PDF guides. You will get everything that we offer to our own students. And then you will have a chance of joining us with some of the highest pass rates in the NEBOSH e-learning industry. Let's get back to the advice. They should then provide the resources and whatever's needed to set up a good health and safety management system. That might include hiring a competent health and safety team. So it's not just hiring any health and safety person. No, you want someone competent. You're not competent to manage the whole health and safety system with just an IOSH managing safety course. No. So you would hire somebody competent who's got a NEBOSH General Certificate at minimum and put those people in place. That health and safety team will assist in the monitoring of health and safety performance. So they may take part in inspections and audits and so on. And they will report on safety performance to top management. And so this is what we call a health and safety review. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But when this review takes place, top management are expected to take part in the review. It's a meeting. They're expected to attend the meeting, to look at the data, the statistics, the report, and then listen to any concerns or recommendations made by the safety team or the health and safety committee. And then they're expected to act on those recommendations as well, and act on any concerns. So if a health and safety manager comes along and says, I'm really concerned that we have a high risk here which we are not properly managing, we would expect the top manager to be listening to that, writing it down and say, right, what do you need me to do? Top managers, again, should be seen, they should be visible, they should participate in health and safety matters. So what does that mean? It means that they should be seen to be communicating the importance of health and safety. So they could do that by sending some emails, by taking part in interviews and having a poster made. There's all kinds of ways they can be seen to be involved. Another way is to walk around the workplace on a regular basis to see how things are working, and then to talk to people one-on-one. And then maybe ask them a health and safety question or two. They could just simply ask, do you feel safe? What one thing would you do if you were me to make this workplace safer? That communicates their commitment to health and safety because they're interested in it, they're asking questions about it, they're talking about it. All these things demonstrate a commitment to it. And the opposite is true. If a manager is walking around but never talking about health and safety, that sends the message that they're not committed to it. I worked in a factory and we had a team of engineers, and the engineers were regularly having accidents, quite nasty accidents. We had some chopped fingers, some bad backs, we had some falls from height. Every month there was a serious accident with an engineer. And I spoke to the engineering manager and I asked him, how often do you talk to people about health and safety? And he said he didn't. And I said, well, why not? And he said, well, I shouldn't have to. Obviously, safety is the most important thing here. Obviously, he said. He said, it's a given. I said, well, it's not a given, because your engineers are trying to do jobs at 3 o'clock in the morning by themselves, which they cannot do by themselves. They're trying to carry these large pieces of equipment and install them with 2 hands when 6 hands are needed. And when I ask them, why did you try to do that? They say, you told them to get that job done before 6 o'clock in the morning, before the day shift comes on. And he's like, well, I shouldn't have to tell them that they don't need to do it if they can't do it safely. And I'm like, yeah, but you do need to tell them this, because when you say to them, get that done before 6 a.m., they interpret that as get that done or else. It's not what you're saying, it's what you are not saying. So what did this manager do? Well, he listened to me. He said, okay, right, let me get all the engineering team together. We had 2 meetings, day shift, night shift. And he sat them all down and he said, right, I know I've said this and I know I've said that, but there's something else which I should have said, which I've never said. I'm going to say it to you now. I want you to listen very carefully. Doesn't matter what I say. If you cannot do the job safely, then you don't do it. Let's pause for a moment and do an exercise. Again, this is a useful exercise for your NEBOSH assessments. Please read through this case study, scroll down to the bottom if you can't see the full case study and the answers, and then select what is this manager doing to demonstrate their commitment to health and safety. Well, this manager's doing a lot, isn't it? The owner of the garden centre is doing a tremendous amount. They are personally delivering a briefing to the whole workforce. And just think about the time that takes. If you get everyone together for, say, 20 minutes, if you've got, say, 30 workers, 20 minutes, that's a lot of time. There's a lot of hours of work lost, plus the time of the owner. They have also provided equipment. They've spent money buying equipment to make things safer. And they did that after a suggestion or a complaint by one of the junior workers. And they listened to that suggestion and then they acted on that suggestion. And they are also very clearly assigning responsibilities to the leaders of each area, telling them that it's your job to make sure no one slips in this shop. And there was a little bit of a hidden one there. Now, here's the thing. Here's a bit of exam technique here. Right? The answers are not always obvious in the scenario. Sometimes you have to infer the answers. You have to deduce the answers from clues in the scenario. Now, this case study did not say that the owner is taking part in reviews of health and safety performance. But because the owner is so familiar with the trends and the accident statistics, it implies, or we can infer, that they are taking part in reviews of health and safety performance. Like, how would they know what the performance is unless they've taken part in the health and safety performance? Moving on then to some final things. We've got some slides here of specific things in the syllabus that we need to talk about. So one of the things is providing resources for the health and safety management system. So I know we've mentioned this a few times, just to be clear on what we mean by resources, because you could get asked a question about the resources. You could get asked about demonstrating commitment, and you need to be able to recognize that providing resources is not just money, but it's also time, it's people, and people with the right skills. And you could include in there equipment and materials as well. So those are the resources needed, right? And by the way, equipment and materials might include software, because here we're talking about safety management systems, and a management system often needs software. So you have to spend money on getting the right software for your incident reporting or your risk assessments and so on. Now, introducing a management system is quite a project. It's quite a large project, really. It requires a bit of a project plan, and it will require a business case. You're going to spend a lot of time, a lot of money introducing the system. It has to be commercially viable. It has to have a commercial reason for doing it. So you create the business case to persuade the top manager. Top manager then authorizes it and gives you the resources that you need in time, people, money, skills, software, equipment, and so on. And then the safety team, and we're going to talk about that in very shortly in a slide here about the competent health and safety people. The safety team then implement that management system. And they don't do everything that the system requires. No, the doing is often done by the managers and the supervisors. But what the safety team is there to do is to monitor the system's effectiveness. They check that the system is working. They then report back to the top management, and together they review the performance of the system. The review often reveals some weaknesses and some problems, so the system gets changed and modified and improved a little bit, so it gets updated, improved, and we go round and round in circles. And that is essentially a management system. It's a plan, do, check, act methodology, and we'll talk about plan, do, check, act and management systems later on in the course. Let's just briefly talk about the roles and responsibilities a little bit more. I know we've already talked about this at length, but people need to know what their job is. We have different people in the organization, and here on this slide we've got some more specific titles, haven't we? Look, we've now got occupational health, we've got human resources, we've got purchasing. All of these people play an important role. And if their role in relation to health and safety is not well defined or it's misunderstood, then we start to have problems. So let me give you some examples. Purchasing manager is often incentivized to save money. Can we buy things at the minimal amount of cost? And if they have that role, the quality of what they buy suffers and the safety of what they buy suffers. So they have to, in their job description and their targets and objectives, we have to include in there that the quality of the materials, the quality of the equipment, the durability of the equipment, and also the safety features of the equipment are also considered. If you've got a purchasing manager buying cleaning chemicals, they have to consider the safety, the health hazards of those cleaning chemicals. It's not just about getting the cheapest chemicals or even the best chemicals. Sometimes the best chemical, like the most effective cleaning chemical, is also very dangerous. So you have to find a balance of all of these things. And so purchasing managers need to be clear on that. Let's have a quick look at this in relation to hierarchies. This slide here kind of shows you a little bit of a hierarchy. We have a top manager, or say a board of directors or something like that, or a chief executive. And underneath them, we have several department directors. And so each director has all of these responsibilities that we've been talking about, you know, the requirement to lead and to be involved and carry out safety tours and be visible and deliver briefings and so on. And notice here that we have a champion. Director 1 is our champion of health and safety, and their job is to lead health and safety specifically. Which brings us on to this slide here, the role of the health and safety team. So this champion would then nominate a competent health and safety person or persons. This will be the team. Now, to be clear, the health and safety team is not responsible for health and safety performance. So if there's an accident, It's not the health and safety team's fault. It is the responsibility of managers to make sure that operations in their area of control go well. And that includes, it's their responsibility to make sure no one gets hurt. So the safety, I mean, this is the way of looking at it, that you can only be responsible for things that are under your control. Yeah? If it's not under your control, you're not responsible for it. So if a safety person is not in control of something, and they're not in control, like if you're a safety person, you're not in charge of the team doing the work. The production manager's in charge, or the operations manager, or the security manager, whoever it is, whatever the manager it is, the manager of that team is in charge of how the work gets done. Not you, the safety professional. So you cannot be responsible for things that go wrong within that team. Your job is to monitor, to advise, to support, and to audit and review, and to correct and train and coach and to help. That's your job, is to help this manager do things safely, to give them everything they need to do things safely. Now, if you fail in that, fair enough, the accident might be partly your fault, but you cannot be held accountable or held responsible for health and safety. So if you have in your job description, you are responsible for ensuring the health and safety, you are responsible for reducing accidents, I would question that. I would say, well, how can I be responsible for bringing the accident rates down when I am not directly in control of the work? If you're going to give that responsibility to me, then doesn't it make sense to ought to give the same responsibility to the operational line managers? Anyway, here we have on this slide the general roles of the safety team. So it's about developing policies and goals, to help implement them, to provide advice, to help with risk assessments, to encourage participation, to monitor performance for inspections, audits, and then to keep management informed on that performance. So you report back to management saying whether things are going well or not well, and you make requests. And a lot of the role of the health and safety team is to work with stakeholders. And what that means is you have to work with people who are affected by the changes you are making. So if you bring in a new policy or a new rule, you have to consult with the people who have to enforce that rule, the people who are affected by that rule, and to consider their views. Because you want to try and introduce a policy or a rule which everybody is happy with, because that way people follow it. If people aren't happy with your rule, chances are it's going to be very difficult to get everyone to follow it. So there's a lot of negotiation, consulting, and working with other people around you. Now, one important point in all of this is competence. The safety team must be competent. What is the definition of competence? Well, it is a combination of knowledge and skills and experience and understanding, and maybe qualifications are a part of that, but just a qualification is not everything. I would certainly include in this, a competent person is aware of the limits of their competence. So there's a limit. There are things that you might not understand very well. I've got limits to my competence. I know a bit about radiation. We're going to talk about radiation later in this course. I know a fair bit about radiation, but it's not my specialism. And certainly when it comes to things like electromagnetic fields, I would say, listen, I can give you some basic advice, but no more than that. Anyway, let's do a quick exercise here. What I'd like to do is drag the job roles under the correct job title. Okay, and remember, the topic of this tutorial is about how do top management demonstrate commitment. So how does a manager demonstrate commitment? Well, they demonstrate that commitment by doing their job well. Finally, let's end with a quick section on reviews of health and safety performance, because we've talked about this a bit. So top management demonstrate their commitment partly by being willing to review the health and safety performance of their organization. So this is usually a quarterly meeting or maybe an annual meeting, depends on the organization, where we sit down and we look at the data, we look at what's happened, and we evaluate how effective is our management system at achieving our goals. So if our goal is to keep everybody safe and to minimize accidents, how well has our system achieved that goal? And the fact that you get senior people to sit around a table and think about this for an hour or two, that shows some commitment. At this meeting, you will identify weaknesses and problems. And so it's an opportunity for management to demonstrate more commitment by being willing to do what is necessary to fix those problems. So that by providing resources, more training, better equipment, changes to roles, and so on. Top managements also have other things on their mind. They have commercial priorities, business priorities, quality issues, customers, marketing, and all of those things. It's also an opportunity for them to demonstrate their commitment to safety by making sure that their wider business goals are aligned with the health and safety performance goals. So it means that when they set a business goal, that they also think about how can we meet this goal whilst not sacrificing health and safety. And there we are, my friends. That brings us to the end of that tutorial on how top management can demonstrate commitment to health and safety. As always, please check out the written materials, do any final quizzes and activities, and as always, see you in the next one.